Get ready to uncover truths and reality of today's politics. Here's your host, Cory Mills.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Uncover California. Oh, indivisible. Oh, you tranny activists, what are we going to do with you? You just can't let go of the fact that the Republican Party is going on offense. We're not backing down, guys. We will be in Ventura. We will be countywide. And every time you attack us, we're going to expose you for the losers that you are, because you're liars, you're hypocrites, and you are the hate group. So enough of that for today. On today's show, super excited, we have investigative journalist Steve Baker from Blaze Media. He's got a huge story to break. And he's also going to tell us a little bit about January 6th and some of the stuff that he found out. Our second guest is investigative journalist HG Goerner. He's going to talk to us about his documentaries on how Marxism has become a political weapon in our country. So you guys, hold on to your hats, stay tuned, and we'll be right back with Steve Baker from Blaze Media. Who's ready to have some fun? You guys, you can now charter the Scarlet Bell paddle wheel riverboat. You guys, the boat holds 150 guests. If you're planning on getting married, you can host a wedding here. If you just want to have a good party, they'll do that too. The boat holds up to 150 guests with all-inclusive packages available. There also is a midweek group discount if you're interested. They have a fully stocked bar, full-service catering, and they'll help you with event planning and theme ideas. I can tell you we did a Trumptilla on this boat, and we're going to do it again. They also have another vessel that you can throw casino night parties on. There is nothing better than the Scarlet Bell in the Channel Islands Harbor. Use promo code CALI and get a great deal on your next event. Well, I'm super excited. Our next guest is an investigative journalist, Steve Baker. You may remember him. He was the journalist covering January 6th, and he was arrested. Of course, President Trump pardoned him. He was a journalist covering a story. He's got a breaking story for us, which unfortunately I think is going to be a disappointment to many of us. And I'm super excited to have him here. We're going to do a little opening clip with him and Glenn Beck talking about January 6th and the color revolution that our country faced, and then we'll bring Steve in.
This is what they were perfecting, these color revolutions, paid for by your tax dollars. And I told you about 5 or 6 years ago, I think they're doing this to America. I think that's what's happening here. This is the guy.
Exactly what
right?
they're doing here. Yes.
Exactly.
He among others, he's not the lone wolf out there.
Right.
I actually tweeted out, and it just dawned on me this morning, because we have this photo at the top of the article on the Blaze. If you go look, and Nancy Pelosi is cradling his face in her hands and just giving him the most adoring. So I'm now calling him Pelosi's Precious. Changed his name as of today.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so what did he do at January 6th?
What we believe through our contacts, our sources, whistleblowers, both named and unnamed, is that he did in fact organize. Now, this is what we've been told, is that he had paid agitators, I didn't say violent people, because his expertise is controlling the narrative. Confederate flags being carried through the Capitol Rotunda, things of that nature. Now, the most interesting aspect of January 6th, I think the most interesting aspect of January 6th was the same organizers of the rally down at the Ellipse that day also organized the Jericho March on December 12th, just a month earlier, and then also organized the Million MAGA March on November 12th, people that were part of those that weekend activities. But at all of those events, there was extreme violence, Antifa, BLM, Proud Boys knocking heads. Antifa was attacking old ladies and elderly couples going back to their cars after attending the rallies. On the December 12th rally, a Proud Boy was critically injured. He was stabbed by an Antifa guy. And then suddenly on January 6th, the largest event of them all, by multiples larger, 0 counter-protesters.
And that was at the Ellipse, right? That was
anywhere.
anywhere.
You saw no counter protesters anywhere.
You know what? I would say it's weird because I was just thinking, well, no, there were at the Capitol, but those are ones I've deemed not part of the movement.
Right,
you know what I mean? That
right.
I've looked at and went, there's no way that person is part of the movement. But they were acting like they were part of the movement.
That's correct. This is what his expertise is controlling the narrative. And what did Nancy Pelosi most famously say when she set up the committee? She said that this was to establish and preserve the narrative of that day.
Steve Baker, welcome to Uncover California. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks for having me. I'm all the way across the other end of the country from you. I'm down in Central Florida right now. It's not where I live, but it's where I'm working for the last couple of weeks.
Wow. So you've been a busy man. You know, we went through the whole January 6th debacle. You have done so much research on that since that happened. The story with Aaron Black, who was an agitator. I believe, like you and Glenn Beck, that we faced a color revolution in this country, and I don't think it's over. More news broke last night. Do you want to share with our audience about that?
Yeah, late yesterday afternoon, Politico had an exclusive, which was the announcement that the assistant chief of police by the name of Sean Gallagher, now that's assistant chief of police for the Capitol Police in Washington, D.C. That's the guys that are the Praetorian Guard for, all the Congress members up there on the Capitol Hill. And Sean Gallagher was elevated to interim or acting chief of police based on the recent retirement of Chief Thomas Manger. And Thomas Manger's been there about 3.5 years, maybe a little over, almost closer to 4 years now. And this is significant because for a couple of reasons. Number one, Sean Gallagher, who was holding the position of assistant chief for the last several years, was also assistant chief on January 6th. And he was in the command center on that day, and he was one of two assistant chiefs who were guiding and directing and failing to do their jobs properly and appropriately to protect the Capitol that day. And he was one of the two assistant chiefs who participated in the we'll call it the suppression of intelligence that was provided to Capitol Police in advance of what was coming their way that day. And then he had a whole bunch of other problems as well, because if you go back and you look at Sean Gallagher's history with the Capitol Police, he had multiple disciplinary reviews, but the most significant one was where he was actually found guilty by the police review board. I call that OPR, the Office of Professional Responsibility. Now, everybody used to always hear internal affairs. Most of the government agencies have updated that from internal affairs to OPR, Office of Professional Responsibility. But in their investigation of him, they had discovered that he was participating in a fraud scheme to defraud the department out of money. Basically, it was a time card scheme. He was the ringleader with several other Capitol Police officers. He was a captain at the time, and he was actually leading them in a scheme where they would fraudulently, turn in hours that they were not working and getting paid additional money. He himself, he cheated the police department out of about $10,000. Now, this is a felony. He was even forging signatures for the other participants in the scheme, because as the captain and he was the supervisor over their fraudulent time cards, he was forging signatures in that situation. And the OPR found him to be guilty. They actually recommended to the Capitol Police that he be terminated. In fact, they even said that we find no other justifiable course of action but for him to be terminated immediately. Well, he didn't get terminated, because this is what happens at the Capitol Police. The Capitol Police are very uniquely positioned. We make a lot of jokes about them being mall cops and glorified tour guides, that sort of thing. I mean, you can spend 20 years as a Capitol Police officer, and the only violence or the only police action you ever get is somebody asking you where the restroom is. Yes, ma'am, it's that way. So there's a lot of jokes about the Capitol Police, but in reality, these are the guys that know where all the bodies are buried.
Right. And who appointed him to this position? And why was he never held accountable?
Well, this is typical. He was part of what's called the Dignitary Protection Detail. And when you are the dignitary on the Dignitary Protection Detail, that means you're traveling with Congress members, traveling with senators, not only all around the country, but all around the world, wherever they go. So you get to see whoever they're sleeping with, who's coming in and out of their hotel rooms. You get to see what their other behaviors are and personal habits and things of that nature. And so when you come to somebody like that who knows where the bodies are buried, and you say to him, "Okay, well, I guess we're gonna fire you from the force," and he goes, "No, I don't think so. You fire me, and I tell what I know about so and so and so and so and so and so." And so what they do is then they give him a slap on the wrist. He gets a 2 week suspension, and then he's not allowed to be promoted for 2 years. And then on the day that his 2 year of scenario where he cannot be promoted expires, he's then promoted from captain to inspector, and then he is elevated up the command chain from there very quickly. He goes from inspector to deputy chief, and then he goes to assistant chief, where he held that position for several years. And today he got the golden ring in that he was appointed the acting chief of police. And that doesn't mean that he will be the long-term chief of police, because they will typically what these police agencies do is they try to find somebody from outside the department to because of the culture and the nepotism and all the other things that go on once you have come up through the ranks in an department. They like to have outside leadership come in to take the top position. But there's an argument as well is that the Capitol Police culture is unique, and that the outgoing chief has now recommended that Sean Gallagher get the job. Well, everybody's up in arms. I mean, our story today on the Blaze is very clear that the Capitol Police are absolutely, despondent over this. They're angry. This was a kick in the gut to their morale. They've had a real morale problem for the last 4 years since January 6th. And
Right.
this was another, kick in the gut to them on the morale issue, because after January 6th, Sean Gallagher received an 87% no vote from the police union. That's his fellow officers, the line officers out there, a no confidence vote. 87% of those
Wow.
officers said, "We do not trust this guy." They believe that he was part of the reason why their lives were put on the line that day, and that they were set up. This is
Right.
what the actual line officers believe about this guy, and yet now you want to promote that guy that they don't trust to the top position. So we've got congressmen coming out against it. We've got the police board, police union rather, has come out against it. It's the Capitol Police Board, to answer your question, who appointed him to the position of acting chief of police.
So basically, you're unelected bureaucracy, it sounds like. It
Correct.
just absolutely crazy. And we've seen this nationwide, even with the border, with these NGOs running people into our country. On January 6th, I went back and watched a lot of the video, and it seems like the crowd, there were bad agitators there. And I think Aaron Black, you had explained that quite well, that that's all this guy does for a living, and he was there. But watching the rest of the crowd that was peaceful until munitions were shot into the middle of the crowd, I think inciting more violence. And even then, I think maybe 50 people were violent out of a million. I mean, it's crazy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, not to get into reliving that day in incredible detail, because obviously when we have only 30 minutes today, it would take us 30 hours for me to even begin to scratch the surface of what I know about January 6th. But yeah, the initial violence that day was not caused by the Capitol Police. In fact, they were undermanned. There was a half a
Yes.
dozen police officers at the barricades, and there were some bad actors, some provocateurs who overran and started the stampede that ran up to the lower West Terrace. And then they collapsed a second fence line, began to tearing that fence line apart because it was a little aluminum metal fence line that they began to dismantle. And those became weapons and spears and that they were using against the police. And then, and it was sometime later that the first, what they call less than lethal munitions were used. Now, it was the manner in which they were used, which then incited the crowd and
Right.
caused some people. I say this in almost every interview I do about January 6th. I saw three types of people there that day because I was there. I was on the West Terrace. I had my camera rolling, and what I saw some bad people doing some bad things. I saw some good people doing some good things. I also saw some otherwise good people doing some really stupid things because they got caught up in the moment. And
Right.
that's on both sides of the police line. Everything that I just said, good people doing good things, bad people doing bad things, otherwise good people doing stupid things happen on both sides, cops and protesters alike. But you're right in your number. There were probably there were certainly less than 100 people that did actual violence against law enforcement. And now the DOJ misinterpreted some people's actions as violence, as complicity, as being in the wrong place at the wrong time, aiding and abetting. Some people had their hands on a fence that got shaken, and they were accused of doing violence. All kinds of things like that. They probably accused somewhere between 300 and 400 people of doing violence, but the video evidence does not support that.
Not to mention the Brady rule was violated in so many of these cases.
Yeah.
I think about John Strand, for instance, where they wouldn't let him play a video, yet the prosecution used a frozen image of him from that video stating he was attacking the police when he was cheering on the police. There's so much of that. And we also cannot forget that President Trump and Kash Patel offered the National Guard, which Nancy Pelosi and Muriel Bowser rejected. So,
And it was rejected by others as well. There
yeah,
were elements from the Department of Defense that rejected it that day and delayed its deployment when they were ready to go. The National Guard was on the buses ready to be deployed, and elements of the Department of Defense said no. They said we don't like the optics, and they did not allow them to be deployed until after the violence was over. They didn't. They didn't. I was there when the National Guard arrived at 5:30.
right,
It was all over by then.
right. Well, you have a story to break here with us today, so we should probably pivot to that because I have a feeling we could talk about January 6th for a very long time. So you've got news about Representative Cory Mills. And as I told you before we came on air, I really like him. Like when President Biden left all the people behind in Afghanistan, it was Cory that went in to rescue people. Well, you have a little bit of news that may just burst my bubble. Do you want to share that with us?
Well, it bursts bubbles and it breaks hearts because many
Yes.
of us looked at him as a true American hero. As a matter of fact, Glenn Beck, right after the rescue missions in Western North Carolina, had him on his podcast, and Glenn Beck himself was calling Cory to his face. You're Captain America.
Yeah.
He came up. His story goes that he came up from poverty, had a very, very bad parental situation as a child. He overcame that, graduated high school, went straight into the military. After the military, he was able to get his bachelor's degree, his master's degree from American Military University. He then went into the work of doing private security with several of these private contractors after his time in the military, of which there was some heroics allegedly during that time. And then there were some heroics allegedly happened during his time with these military private security contractors over in Afghanistan and Iraq and Middle East. And then he started his own company, which provided weapons, both the types of less than lethal weapons that we talked about earlier to domestic law enforcement, but also other lethal type weapons to foreign countries. And then he became a multi-millionaire as a result of his leadership of that company and founding of that company. And then he starts, he's been renowned for rescuing people after, Afghanistan fell, the Biden regime's pullout and that
Right.
disaster. He rescued people from there. He rescued people from Israel. He's rescued people from Haiti. He's rescued people from Western North Carolina when the storm came through just last year.
And
So
I'm so grateful for that.
he has this incredible history, except, Lori, it's not all true. And there's much more um, detail outside of and inside those stories than have ever been revealed until a group of intrepid people started digging into his story. And most of the problems began with his assertions and there's a thing called stolen valor. And I don't know,
My son's a Marine.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Any service member, regardless of what branch of the military that they're in, if they served honorably and they hear of and learn of another person who either claims to have served and didn't, or claims to have been deployed in a battle somewhere and didn't participate in that, or received an award for participating in a battle and didn't, or bought some medals at the Army's, surplus store and just wears them around and claims, or they put on their campaign website that they participated in certain battles, missions, and it did certain deeds of heroism, but then the guys that actually served with them, who were in those circumstances, who were in those battles, who were in those particular events that he took credit for, say, no, didn't exactly happen like that. And so these individuals, we're talking about prime sources, actual soldiers who served with him, were saying, not so much. And they began doing the research and putting the pieces of the puzzle together, because when he ran for Congress, a lot of people cared about his claims of valor before he ran for Congress. In fact, all the way back in the 2000s, he was working for a private military contractor called DynCorp. They do, private security, that sort of thing overseas in hot zones, war zones. And he was working with DynCorp, and when DynCorp actually, they found out that he had exaggerated the claims of his actual training. I mean, he had claimed to be a trained sniper. He wasn't. He had claimed to be a graduated from Ranger School. He hadn't. He had never gone to Ranger School. And this was way before he was even known to the American public or ran for Congress here in Florida, where I'm at right now. And when DynCorp learned about these things, they fired him. This was long before anybody knew about who Cory Mills was. So you fast forward to he's running for Congress, and he's making these same claims on his website, in his campaign speeches, in his fundraising. Well, stolen valor, especially if you use claims of valor that you did not earn in to raise money for any purpose, whether for a campaign or just to enrich yourself, that's a federal crime. It's also a crime in most states as well. In some states, it's a felony. And so that is something that a lot of people have been working on related to Cory Mills' story. And then when you start digging into a man's life who's making false claims about himself, you start learning that a lot of other things are not exactly so either. So that's where this all began.
Right.
Kind of laying the groundwork of why people were starting to look at Cory Mills. It's not like, I mean, this was not opposition research. And remember.
Yeah, because again, with a hunch, on the surface level, just a normal citizen is going to think, well, gosh, this guy just went and rescued all those people in Afghanistan. Is this just something to bring him down? And it's so disappointing to hear as a mom of a Marine that he would do this to get ahead. But it does go deeper than this, doesn't it? I'm heartbroken over this.
Yeah, no, it goes much, much deeper because, as I said, when you start peeling back the first layer, unfortunately, there's always a second layer. And if the first layer was built on lies, there's no telling what you're going to find under that first layer. And so the claims of stolen valor really got a lot of legitimate. I mean, these are good people. These are people that protect valor.
Right.
They actually organizations that's what they do. They protect honorable service members' valor. But they also they do the exact opposite as well. They go into service members that were not given their recognition or their awards or their medals for heroic deeds that they did, and help them acquire those, whether it's just a Purple Heart or a Silver Star or whatever it is. They're working both sides of that. So we're talking about good, honorable Americans. So nobody wanted to go after Cory Mills just because he beat somebody in a campaign in a primary. That's Politics is dirty business. That happens every day, in every campaign. You're running against, whether you're running against people in your own party, they're going to spend thousands of dollars hiring private investigators to do oppo research. That's just
Right.
the way it works.
Well, and the
You're
Democrats will just make stuff up. Let's
right,
be
right.
real.
And
Yeah.
so, and if it's just made up, then it goes away, it goes off into
Right.
the ether. But when
Right.
it's not just made up, it comes back to bite you in the butt. And so, what happened? And I'll give you the really short version of why Blaze Media, a predominantly conservative news organization, would go after a GOP member of Congress
Right.
in our investigative journalism. It's because in the action where Glenn Beck and two of our other Blaze Media reporters met with Cory Mills in Western North Carolina in the first 2 days after the storm up there. They were looking at FEMA. Cory was up there rescuing people. They met at a common place together, and they interacted, and then they all got on a helicopter together to fly back to the airport. And it was on that helicopter, a really odd and very peculiar thing happened. Cory Mills, for whatever reason, he started telling a story to Glenn Beck, Jill Savage, who is the host of Blaze News, The Mandate, and then also our national correspondent, Julio Rosa. And they're on the helicopter with him, and he starts telling him our Blaze team, including Glenn, about the how lonely he is, and how lonely he was, and the fact that he was going through a divorce, and he hadn't been with anybody in over a year, and he was lonely, and they're like, okay, what's sad. That's sorry, dude. Whatever. Now this was the end of September. The storm was September 27th. This was just a couple of days after the storm, right?
Right.
And then fast forward about 5 months, and on February 19th of this year, 1 o'clock in the afternoon in DC, there was a call to the police, and it was a domestic disturbance, domestic violence call from a young woman, 27-year-old woman, who the Metropolitan Police came up on the luxury penthouse apartment of Cory Mills, and this young lady was making allegations that he had assaulted her. She had bruises, visible bruises that were reported in the police report. And then the other thing that came out in the police report is that they had been living together for over a year. Now, Cory's not divorced yet. All right. So he's going through a divorce. He's not divorced yet. All right. So he's got a girlfriend on the side going through a divorce. That's not a scandal, right? Even for
Right.
a Republican congressman, it's just not. But what happened was, and where he made his mistake is he said to three very sharp journalists on that helicopter how lonely he was and that he had not been with anybody in over a year. And then all of a sudden, just 5 months later, the cops are called, a police report is generated, and we find out that he's been living with somebody for over a year at this point. And so the question is if you lie to me about that, what else have you lied to me about? Now,
Right.
Glenn at this point has already done a podcast with him calling him Captain America, like
Right.
10, 15 times during that podcast. So they're not happy. And, we got the go ahead to start an investigation. Well, the first thing that was revealed to us, because there was a website out there called CoryMillsWatch.com, CoryMillsWatch.com. And it's a website that tracks all of the information, accumulates and reveals all the documents related to the allegations of his stolen valor. That's an easy one to go to. Found that very quickly. And then we start learning more. We start learning about his other relationships and how they developed. For instance, in 2014, he married an Iraqi woman. Now, this was supposed to have been his second marriage. We've since learned there was a third marriage that he's never revealed or never talked about in his life bio history. There's another child as well that he has never talked about in his bio. Another, just for whatever reason, he's chosen to deceive and hide that part of his life. In this third marriage to this Iraqi woman, he was married in one of the most notorious mosques, radicalized mosque that churns out tons of, people on the terror watch out of this mosque in Falls Church, Virginia, just outside of D.C. And the imam who officiated their Islamic wedding was a mosque who was, an imam who was formerly an unindicted co-conspirator in the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993.
Wow.
Muslim Brotherhood guy, radical Islamist, and this is who performed that ceremony. We have since learned, all verified, Cory speaks fluent Arabic. People that have analyzed his speech patterns for us say that he's not only fluent, he's native and almost without any accent whatsoever in whatever dialect he's speaking in. We have 5 different sources who have told us that he converted to Islam in 2013, 2014. Those sources also tell us that he is, sorry, I got a ring going on here. I can't even turn off.
Uh,
I don't know why I'm not able to turn it off. I'm sure you hear that. Just a moment
I
here.
don't hear. No, I just hear you.
Okay. All right. Well, good.
So
It was
we're
just on
all
the
right.
computer. So the problem with all of this is there's something else going on with this man related to his relationship to Islam, while at the entire time he's been maintaining that he's a Christian. Now, let me leave you with I'll leave you with this punchline and
Yeah,
everybody,
because
and then encourage everybody
this
to
is
go
how,
to theblaze.com and look at the stories. We have 4 stories out on him right now. The other thing is that I'm in Florida because I'm working on this story. And we have discovered a rogue FBI agent who was interviewing our sources on our story, ostensibly claiming that she was interviewing Cory Mill, or investigating Cory Mills' stolen valor. But we've learned since then that she was not authorized by the FBI, that she was working on her own, off book or rogue, however you want to say it. And then in addition to that, I went to the place where Cory Mills claims is his church in Orlando. I went to and visited his church just this Sunday morning, and I had an opportunity to sit down with the pastors in their office after the service. And this is the church where Cory says that he is a member. He told Blaze Media that he has always been a Christian. He told Blaze Media that specifically named the church where he was a member and named the pastors by name. This is the same house, these pastors is the house where Cory launched his campaign in 2021, his first campaign for Congress. It was in these pastors' house. Their names are Steve and Cheryl Ingram of the Word of Faith Church in Orlando. And I sat down with them. 99% of our conversation was off the record, but I will tell you this. They did tell me that Cory Mills, in the last 4 years since they met him, has only ever attended their church twice, and that they have never actually had a pastoral relationship with him, and that is highly exaggerated. So again, just one of many, 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 many levels of deceits, diversions, half truths, lies that we're finding out about this guy. And quite frankly, we have good reason to believe that there may be a lot more going on with him.
Well, it's scary too, because if you look at the Islamists' main goal is to take over the world at whatever cost. They can lie, they can cheat, they can whatever. And I do believe that we have faced a color revolution. And yet it seems that if all of this is true, has he infiltrated the government on false pretense to cause harm? And again, I had a Shayna Chappelle, who was Kareem Nakui's mother on. He was one of the 13 that was killed at Abbeygate.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at Cory as a hero. And it is truly heartbreaking to think everything about him is a lie. So as we wrap up, Steve, I wish I could have you for more time. Please come back. I'd love for you to update this story.
Yeah.
If you ever want to come to California, I will throw an event for you where you can tell all the stories you want. I'm truly honored to have had you here. So tell everybody where they can find you and where they can follow you on social media and any way they can support your work.
Yeah, I'm all over X and Facebook, so you can go to just look me up on Facebook under my name. You can go to X at it's at Steve Baker USA, at Steve Baker USA. My personal account on Facebook is the same thing. It's Steve Baker USA. Then I have a kind of a blog page or on Facebook as well, but I mirror everything on both, so you can find me either one. But X at Steve Baker USA, and then obviously all of our stories about this series and about the Capitol Police and about January 6th are on theblaze.com. Just look up my name. We have a section at the Blaze called The Truth About January 6th, and it's actually theblaze.com/truth, and you can see all of our stories about January 6th. They're on YouTube and, of course, obviously on Blaze TV as well. So that's where everybody can find me.
Okay, and before you go, because it's going to bug me if I don't ask you, bottom line, with everything that you're looking at with Cory Mills, do you think that he's a plant in our government? I mean, what do you think the big game is here? I have to ask.
I will just tell you it's a very fair question.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to your further reporting on this, and please come back. We want you to update us, okay?
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate you having me today.
Oh, anytime. You're always welcome here. Thanks, Steve. All right, everybody, stay tuned. Our next guest is HG Goerner, and he has a documentary out on Marxism in our government. What a great segue. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody. I don't know if you've been supporting the show by going to themagamall.com, but I just got my new Doge hat. I love this hat. He's got so many new designs. He has Maha. He's got ice hats. But anyways, remember to go to themagamall.com. And if you use promo code Kelly, CALI, you'll get a really good discount. Check out the Doge hat. Everybody needs one.
For 15 minutes.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm really excited to have our next guest. He is an author, and he did this book, United States Socialist Republic. He's also done documentaries. He is an investigative journalist. It's a day for that today. HG Goerner, welcome to Uncover California.
Thank you, Lori. So nice to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Good.
So you've been a busy man. I kind of got wrong what your whole mission was. And I had asked you, are you talking about Marxism in America? And you explained that quite differently. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Well, there's Marxism, then there's Marxist political warfare.
That's what.
Now, here's the thing. I need to clarify this. I tagged on Marxist onto political warfare. This is a 300-page dissertation declassified out of the Department of Defense on political warfare, or what's called Soviet political warfare. The KGB designed it back in the 30s, and now we'll just move right through this. Marxism is a study of Marxist ideology to basically move socialism to communism.
Right.
Political warfare is an actual strategy. It's an asymmetric, unconventional type of warfare that's been used before, and I'm going to explain that. Right now, here in this country, it is going on in full scale.
Right.
Let's kick back. Let's go back just a little bit. Back in the 60s, John F. Kennedy, during the, not the Bay of Pigs, but the Cuban Missile Crisis, okay? He actually kicked the Soviet Union out of Cuba and basically sent them back across the Atlantic with missiles in tow and their tail between their legs. Now you have a person like Khrushchev and these other guys, they're not going to take that sitting down. So he knew the ramifications, and that's what I put. You see this in my documentaries about what happened. He knew the ramification of his decisions, and he was assassinated for it. But more importantly, before he was assassinated, he and the intelligence community and the military apparatus within our country began a political warfare campaign on the Soviet Union. How do I know that? Because a gentleman from Lithuania and Latvia, two different gentlemen, actually said, "Hugo, what in the heck are you doing?" Because I had a sign on the back of my truck displaying my book. And he said, "You're going to get shot and you're going to get killed." And I said, "Well, hopefully I'm going to be all right." He says, if we were to do that back in Lithuania and Latvia in the 80s when I was there, he said, we would have been killed. He says the same thing that's happening here in this country right now today happened in the 80s when I was there as a young man, before I left, and before actually the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. He says the dismantling of the statues, the political warfare being everything that you saw back then is happening right now here in this country.
And see, I believe that we did face a color revolution. I believe that we're still in the midst of it.
We're dead in the middle of it.
I think that they did this with the open borders. I think they did this with the lawfare against President Trump. I think they did this with the BLM riots where they were tearing down our statues. I think they've done it with Antifa where they try to go after anybody violently that opposes the left-wing narrative. I have faced it here locally with a group called Indivisible, which is funded by George Soros, trying to shut down events that we're having for the Republican Party. And I'm not backing down. I think it's great that President Trump is in office. I think our Congress needs to grow a pair. They have no testicular fortitude at all.
Well, believe it or not, there are good guys fighting about that, but part of political warfare is to keep their information from you.
Right.
A main component of political warfare is to keep you uninformed. Censorship is a main component of political warfare. There's a lot of great people that I know personally. Hawley, Senator Ted Cruz. I was actually on Senator Ted Cruz's campaign. I spent time, money, and effort going. I broke bread with the guy. He's a major fighter. So is Hawley. There's other people that are great fighters. Congressman Mark Green. But more importantly, what you see, if we can get back to it, one of the violence, conventional warfare. Let me see if I can put this properly. I term these people that are indispensable as enemy combatants.
Right.
Tulsi Gabbard calls them domestic enemies.
Right.
These are enemy combatants. and is not a because enemy. The term enemy combatant has been lent to people in conventional warfare like bombs and bullets. It's all changed now. This is a war of information. The less you know, they don't want you well armed, because if you are well informed, it's like having a weapon. You are well armed. This is a political war being waged on this country, and guess what? It is starting to escalate. You will see prominent people now begin to get assassinated. I'm guaranteeing you it's going to be happening. It's basically they're picking people at random. Now they'll start going after. Here's the best way I can tell you. Our new documentary called A Nation in Distress will air on July 13th, the 1-year anniversary of Donald Trump's attempt to be assassinated.
Right.
That's a whole nother long story. But let's get back real quick and get to the crux of this.
Well, and you were really quick, though, because I don't want to run past what you just said.
I gotcha.
You talked about censorship. Mm-hmm. Now, I can tell you, in 2020, I reported about Hunter Biden's laptop. I shared the New York Post story, Facebook, Instagram, the old Twitter under Jack Dorsey, all banned me within the same hour. Mm-hmm. You may not talk, even though it was a true story. And then they went after my business website. Mm-hmm. And I've never been able to get back into my business website. They wanted to silence us, but I haven't trusted the media since 2011. So I guess I am a weapon within itself.
Well, to be honest,
and they could be coming after. Well, I've had to file 2 police reports personally.
I'm going to tell you right now. Guard yourself.
Oh, I'm guarded.
I'm telling you, yes, ma'am. Because if I may say, if you pose a serious threat, and I don't want to detract from how what your contributions and what you're doing, they're valuable. But at this particular point, you do not pose a serious threat to their achieving their agenda, what I'm going to point out here in a minute. The point is, you do pose a threat, but they're not going to spend a lot of time and energy they're going to try to detract from you, shut down your websites, etc. But they will start taking people out. Look at those people in D.C.
Yes.
These were random people.
Yes.
That's just the start. Remember what happened in Palm Springs? They blew up. Those are the starts. I called this months and months ago. But more importantly, what we're gonna see here is first an escalation, but also, you get guys like Jake Tapper, the legacy media. All these guys, they bounce. They try to.
They lied to the American people for years, and all of a sudden they're pretending that like they never knew that Joe Biden had cognitive issues. And we all knew that he did. My dad had dementia. It was clear as day. I'm like, that guy's got dementia. Yeah. And they lied to the American people, and they continue to lie. And sorry, Jake Tapper, you're an asshole, and you lied to the people, and you knew Joe had problems.
And that's part of political warfare.
Yes.
Basically, to flat out lie to you, then deny that they lied. And
yes.
then basically, and using deceit and deflection, they'll change the subject. Jake Tapper is an unbelievable clown. It is so, I can't. There's really nothing that defines what a circus that guy is.
Right. And you look at the border, ever since 2016, when President Trump wanted to secure that border, they didn't want the wall. You're separating kids from parents. Joe Biden goes into office. They open up the borders. They sit there and lie to the American people and say the border's secure. They lose 350,000 migrant children, probably into the sex trade and labor trade, gone. Yep. And then right before the election, Kamala suddenly wants to fix the border, and everybody recognizes there's a problem. I actually was on Jubilee Middle Ground just a month ago and had these people on the left saying, well, we need to have more judges at the border. We need to build the wall. And I looked at them like, now you want to build the wall? Now you want to, exactly. They moved the goalposts like they were along with us the whole time. And they still think the border's open. Donald Trump shut that stuff down.
Well, you see the numbers drop. They dropped by about 99%.
Yeah, 14,000 to 172 a day.
Have you heard of the Cloward and Piven strategy?
No, tell us about it.
Cloward and Piven back in the 60s basically were socialists. Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. These people were socialists, and they had a strategy. They were, pure socialism. flood the country with migrants, and put so much strain on the welfare system within the country to bring it down financially. And that's what I'm talking about in some ways. Why do they want to bring the country down? Here's the point that I want to get to. What is the objective? The objective is not to destroy America. When you can take it down, and through policies, and I can show you on a longer, it takes a little bit longer, but here's the best way I can tell you. Through policies, one day, tonight you'll go to sleep. The next day, through policies that are put in while you're asleep, literally with a stroke of a pen, you can be arrested. You will be in violation of the law when you wake up the next day. This is very, very serious because this is an overt, or basically what's called active measures within political warfare. These are active measures that are kept from you. But more importantly, here, what is the goal? Why do these people want to take down this country? This is about ownership. I'm going to read you something here real quick. These are from the Department of EIA, U.S. Energy Information Act. Why do they want to take ownership of this country? Well, because it starts a long time ago with a guy named Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller back in the 40s.
And not the special counsel Robert Mueller.
Exactly.
Just get that straight.
Exactly. If you go to my first documentary called America on the Precipice, I talk about this. Robert Mueller was the United Nations provocateur back when they founded the United Nations in 1948. He basically was the guru. Everybody went to him. He had 3 goals. No war, no hunger, no poverty. That is the very crux of the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. He's the one who put this whole thing together. Why do they want to? They put forth these sustainable goals. This is the whole. Everybody's Klaus Schwab and everybody's surrounding around the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yuval Harari.
Oh yeah,
all
exactly.
those creeps.
Why do they want to?
Sorry, their policies kill people. They don't save people.
I can't argue with that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is why is there this move for sustainable development? Because they know that, well, for the most part, much of our resources on this planet are finite.
Right.
Why do they want to get control of them? Why? And that goes right down to the crux, and we can probably conclude with this. I'm going to read you something here real quick out of the EIA. Here in this country.
What does EIA stand for again?
U.S. Energy Information, EIA, U.S. Energy Information Administration.
Okay.
I'm going to read that here in a minute. But what is this big thing about the Sustainable Development Goals? What drives our world? Oil. There's a little bit longer explanation, but I'll get right to the crux of it. This is about taking ownership of the country through policies. It's about ownership. This is this big, it's going to be for the benefit of all of us. We're going to get control of this and everybody will benefit. We're going to save the planet. Okay? Don't even get into that. What is needed? Why do they want to do this? Because right underneath our feet is the largest reserve of shale oil on the planet. Mm-hmm. Largest. If they can get control of that, and how do you get control of it? You have to own it.
Right.
There is a Obama put forth. I can't remember the executive order, but it is the Emergency Resources Preparedness Act. Domestic. I'm not exactly sure. 13647. Anyway, it's about preparedness, and it links itself to the after World War II. We must be prepared for such emergencies, wars, and stuff like this. Obama put forth the executive orders. It's the Domestic Emergency Preparedness Act. What that does is, in a major emergency where it threatens our national security, the federal government can take full control of everything.
Yeah.
So basically, when they can, with a major,
excuse me,
the COVID was the precursor. Governor Newsom basically took control, shut down everything, and he did it open-ended. That's a violation of the rights of the American people.
Well, and Chevron, all the energy companies are leaving the state now.
Well, and so are the insurance companies.
Yeah, well, that's a whole different story.
But this is about ownership, and that's what if you go to preservingamericaepac.com, you can watch all our documentaries, the 3 of them, America on the Precipice, Defining a Nation, and Legacy of a Nation for free. Our 4th one that we just put out is basically going to blow the lid. In February 26th, as a credentialed member of the press, I was able to sit on a Department of Homeland Security hearing on cybersecurity and the cyber threats. We get 3,000, major, we get many, many more. But there's approximately 3,000 major serious cyber attacks on this country every day.
I believe that.
3,000. Mark Green, the chairman, said, for the most part, and this is a quote, the CCP has burrowed into our critical infrastructure.
They're everywhere.
They have actually they got their thumb over the enter button, and they've leveraged themselves. This is a major threat. But the point in our documentary called "A Nation in Distress," now for the most part, the Democrats, Benny Thompson is the poster child for the Marxists in our federal government. You ever heard of a guy named Trevor Loudon?
Yes.
Trevor Loudon is a friend of mine. He is in our first documentary. We've talked about this before.
Tell him I said hello.
You got it. I've got his direct cell phone number. Here's the thing. Benny Thompson is the poster child. He is one of the Marxists. There's a handful, well, there were 13, 14 years ago. Now, I believe that the entire Democratic wing is all pretty much Marxist.
Yes.
Some lean slightly left, many of them lean hard left, but they've all taken up the mantle. And here's the thing, that in our documentary, and I'm going to we'll leave it with this. I sat there and I watched Benny Thompson no longer support securing or upholding the protections of our country with regard to the cyber threats. No more conventional war. And you see Ukraine and Russia battling it out. Here in this country, it will not be like that.
I don't know. I think we're getting really close to kinetic war here. I think that if they continue this, this is going to get bad.
It could. It could.
You know, you've got that attack on Russia right now. They're poking a nuclear country. We want peace there. People are dying. They've wiped out a complete generation of young men and women. Yeah. And we have China on the move. You know that they want to take Taiwan. I don't know how the Korean election went. Do you know? I didn't check on it today. But there was a CCP person looking to take over Korea. They want those chips in Taiwan to cut us off at the knees.
Well, we can predict all we want. Do we really know? All we can do is hope and pray.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. We're seeing, really, to be honest with you, and this is what I talked about in our 4th documentary, a global struggle for the balance of power.
Yeah.
The CCP has leveraged themselves. There was an article in the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They put out a statement back in October that the CCP now controls the movement of goods on the planet. They have the complete dominance of the maritime movement of goods.
They own Terminal 5 in the Port of Los Angeles. The
Terminal
CCP
5?
does. Yeah, the CCP does. And I was in Costa Rica. They bought the Costa Rican government a stadium. So now the whole Costa Rican government is beholden to the CCP. They have infiltrated South America. They're owning land.
They own
next
the global
to our,
South.
Yeah, they're owning land near our military bases. Mm-hmm. This is bad. This is bad. It's not a good thing.
Did you hear what happened just 3 hours ago?
No, because I've been here.
I gotcha. 2 Chinese nationals were caught.
Oh, with that biological weapon.
Yeah.
In our country.
They arrested them. They had biological weapons that could take down basically all agriculture.
Yes.
And mostly specific.
Well, and we have to think with the 4 years of an open border, I believe 10.5 to 20 million people crossing our border illegally, we have to wonder, with all the gotaways that never even went through the port of entry, who's in our country right now? And this younger generation doesn't get it because they've never gone through what we have. They weren't there for 9/11.
Gen Z?
They've never seen, they didn't see what we saw with ISIS burning people in cages, Anthony Foley, a journalist, beheaded. They never saw any of that. They're completely clueless, and they think love will unite the world, yet their outlook on love is giving kids sex changes. I mean, it's so warped, it's insane.
They're more concerned about their feelings than the truth.
Yes.
The truth is what I say it is.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
And I tell them to pound sand because I don't care. That's why I've had to file 2 police reports. They don't like me because I tell the truth.
Yeah. And many of these Gen Zs won't. But if we can, I think, here's the thing. I think we're going to win this war, even if it's conventional, because the actual might and the power of this country, China will not attack us. No one will attack the United States. Trust me.
I hope they won't.
There's not going to be any boots on the ground. There's not. They use weapons of mass destruction as a bargaining chip. But let's get down to brass tacks just for a second. You've seen Greta Thunberg.
The one that flies around on a plane and takes yachts, and yet she's all about the climate. What a hoax that is.
Did
That's
you hear
a whole
about the
show in
flotilla?
itself.
You hear about the flotilla?
Well, what did she do now?
Now she's headed to Gaza to bring supplies.
Oh, that'll go well.
I posted a thing on X talking about I hope and pray that she's okay. But
Yeah.
I put up an actual $100 bill on X. I said, here's a $100 bill. I says, if she can make it out of there without getting taken hostage, I'll bet anybody $100 she won't make it. They'll take her hostage.
Well, and that could very well be. What I think these kids don't realize is these people don't think the way that we do. They don't think the way that their religion tells them, which is also a political construct, tells them the infidel must die. There is no making peace with these people.
They don't negotiate with you.
And for them,
she's Western European.
Yeah.
She represents everything that they're trying to destroy.
It's kind of like queers for Hamas. What do they think is going to happen if they were to go move into Gaza? They're going to be thrown off buildings, stoned to death, and killed.
That's the part that's the problem.
It's ironic.
I love being with you today.
Well, I loved having you.
We'll have to do this again, but a little longer. We'll get into some details. You know what? In fact, I'll leave you with this quote because it's kind of interesting. There is substantial uncertainty about the levels of future liquid fuels supply and demand in the United States.
Drill oil,
Drill,
guys.
baby, drill.
Drill, baby, drill.
This is about ownership.
Yes. Now, again, you guys, where can they find your book online?
If you go to preservingamericaepac.com, you can click, you can scroll down, you can find the book, and you can buy it on Amazon. Basically, just go to the preservingamericaepac.com. You'll find it right there.
Okay, and let everybody know where they can see your documentaries.
Same place. Here's what we're probably going to do. I probably put the 3 documentaries that I wrote and produced, cost me a major chunk. We're not going to even get into how much they cost me. The point is, the 4th one we're going to put on Amazon for $3.
Okay, good to know.
And that's going to give you firsthand knowledge of how the Marxists on the other side of the aisle have basically now violated their oath to preserve and protect this country. They're not upholding their oath anymore. They've declared war on this country.
Although they're using lawfare to say that President Trump's breaking the Constitution. These guys don't know what the Constitution is.
What's really funny is you can see, oh my God, Obama in our documentary in Legacy of a Nation. The absurdity, the irony is stunning. We posted in our documentary him saying, clinically, we have, for the most part, tested the vaccine on billions of people.
Yeah. I didn't take it.
And he said that all you need to do is flood the country's town square with enough raw sewage to the point where no one trusts the information they're getting or their elected officials. Once that's happened, the game's won.
Okay, so let's talk about that really quick before we go. What would your advice be to the people watching this show right now? I always tell people, do your due diligence, do your own homework. Don't trust anything you see on TV.
Bingo.
Don't trust anything you see on the internet. Those algorithms are skewed too. Where would you tell people to go to hear the truth or to find the truth? Where would you suggest they start their due diligence?
Going to preservingamericaepac.com, going to Lori, going to your site, going to people that are on the right, are Trump supporters. Everything on the left, they're not going to give you anything they're going to tell you are going to be lies. But more importantly, if I may say, a well-informed citizen is a well-armed citizen.
Yes.
A major component of Marxist political warfare is to keep you uninformed
And silent.
Absolutely.
And silent.
That's what political war, terrorism is about. The use of violence or the threat, that's terrorism.
Yeah. We just real quick, I have to tell you, we actually were doing an event in Ventura, and we had Terrence Wayne, mother of 6, who the schools tried to transition her daughter without her knowledge. And so we threw an event with her as speaker. This Indivisible group that is pretty big in our county, funded by George Soros, decided to call the restaurant and complain, and then they started doing the 1-star reviews. The owner of the restaurant called us and
started waging war on them.
Well, they did. And so anyways, we told him what was happening, and he asked us to talk to his promoter, who just so happened to be a trans activist. And so he had told us, cancel your event or cancel your speaker, or you can't use the restaurant. We said, well, we're not canceling our speaker. And oddly enough, a gay man in the hills of Ventura offered his home to us for the night. We are not going away, Ventura. We are not going away, Indivisible. They can pound sand, little commies. So,
love you, Lori.
Love you too.
We're going to win this war. Trust me. We will win it. It's a war of attrition.
Yeah, but I'm not backing down. So
Don't
never
ever
ever
give up.
backing down. Okay, other than your website, give your website one more time.
PreservingAmericaEPAC.com.
Okay, and are you on social media at all?
I'm on X. I just got temporarily spanked because I posted something that somebody complained about, and I'll be back up in 12 hours.
What was that? Did you say a bad word?
It was so funny. People complain, and when you get that guy, he's doing this. Okay, so they swat you. Okay, don't do that.
Yeah.
I posted October 7th. If you sneak in the middle of the night and you kill somebody, their relatives are going to kill you back.
What's so controversial about that? Come on, whoever's working over there at X, Elon, you got to tame the little fact checkers.
Well, that's part of political warfare. What happened was X, when you use kill and stuff like that in the algorithm, basically, this guy, he wants to kill everybody. No, I don't. All you need to do is get one person to complain.
Wow. Okay, HG, thank you so much for coming in, and I will call you Hugo because you are my friend.
I love you, dear.
Okay, and everybody else, stay tuned. Next week, we are going to have a congressional candidate coming in, Sam Gallucci, who's running against my friend Mike Kozlow. And then after that, we're going to have Mark Grennan. Now, if you guys remember back during COVID, where the left was freaking out because President Trump said, well, what if they can get bleach in their veins? Well, this guy's going to tell us about the actual chemical that can be used to soak through your skin to get rid of disease. And so he's going to be here to explain it all to us. His name is Mark Grennan. He's a doctor, and he will be here to inform you. So everybody, we'll see you next week. If you enjoyed this video, remember to follow me on X at Lori Mills, the number 4CA42, Uncover Cali on Rumble, and Uncover California on YouTube.
California.